We lost to Nasus again. The second time in 2 goddamn weeks in a game 3. Thank God my allergies are killing me. Because if I had to record this video outside, I'm terrified for the things that would happen whenever the kids are walking by. Anyways, let's get into this.
Something that I gotta do with both on.
I apologize in advance if I sound a little bit my nose is beyond, allergies are just hitting. If you don't know, the Northeast and New York City, we're basically going through right now what is called the Great Pollinating, where every tree decides all at one time they're going to get their sperm all over you. That's a little gross for this video, ain't it? But it's true. That's exactly what's on us. And oh God, I've 3 days of just getting through this, which I was hoping would be filled by some Team Liquid Alienware League of Legends both today and tomorrow. And that's obviously not going to be the case now. We got slapped by FlyQuest. We got destroyed by FlyQuest in the series. Let's be very clear. Game 2, I know a lot of people are going to point to is oh, we looked fantastic. We hands diffed, I would agree. But games 1 and 3, not fun. And the drafting woes that we raised a few weeks ago seem to be continuing themselves in some way, shape, or form. I think the best way to look at this is a comparison between our Game 1 versus Sentinels from this past weekend versus the Game 1 versus FlyQuest this week, where we have the very same idea of the Ashe Seraphine bot lane with a jungler that can go in, some sort of tank topside and the Silent or Ornn, and then a damage dealing mid laner. But there's a big difference between how Quid plays Yone and how Quid plays Annie. And I understand that Quid would go on to win with the Annie in the Sentinel series, but it's just not a champion that I associate Quid with. And it became very clear that when we gave over, unlike in the Sentinels game, they had a Jhin Rumble that they were just hoping to trap us in. This time, it was a Caitlyn Pantheon that just kept finding ways to just absolutely pick us off. Yawn and Quid were dying so quick in these fights that it was okay, I think we just thought what would happen in the Sentinels draft would be exactly what happened here. But FlyQuest drafted a comp that deals a lot more consistent damage and was just able to dive in and pick us off. Honestly, it wasn't even really Caitlyn damage, even though that definitely helped them. It was more so just we kept getting caught, which you can make the argument is positioning on us, but I don't like the draft from Quid's perspective. I don't like the Annie on him. Game 2, where we win, I will still be honest with you, I don't care for this draft. I will never care for a Jhin draft in general. It just does nothing for me, but it's not like it even mattered because Morgan had one of the most impressive Jax games I've seen from a North American top laner, maybe ever. Quid also dealing an insane amount of damage as Ahri is just very on brand and fitting for him. It's much more of a him champion versus Annie, which I think goes to show that point. But we have to talk about this egregious Game 3 draft, because I can't believe we set ourselves up for this. 2 weeks ago, the big thing was the Nasus. We know that they can pull it out. We know we can get Susan. It's happened before. FlyQuest can play these comps that just scale, and they're willing to wait till the game is in their favor and then just outscale us. The 4th pick Senna, with both jungle and top open, knowing that Nasus is available, knowing that Cassante is available, is just one of the wildest choices I think I've ever seen in draft. I knew it was coming. I'm Plat, and I knew exactly what was going to happen in this draft the second we picked the Senna. Other than, I was a little bit excited first. I was ooh, Senna. And then I thought about it for half a second. It's we have a Jace and we have a Senna. And we were hovering in a Azir, thinking about sending the Jace top, but instead we flexed the Jace mid to then have a Gnar top, of which Morgan went back to Game 1 form. We just didn't look good on Game 2, where he's just soloing and single-handedly getting us advantages that would snowball into other areas of this game. I'm just so confused. I need Spawn to explain this one to me. I need a explanation, which may actually, you know what? Let me check and see if one's available right now. Let's see if Team Liquid posted our post-game draft, or not draft, our interview thing that they do with Spawn. No, unsurprisingly, no video from Spawn on this one addressing that. But brother, I gotta know. I gotta know what you were thinking on that one. Was the Jace first pick? I think is the most sus thing of it all. But then the Maokai as well. I don't like this draft whatsoever. And this continues, in my opinion, to be a problem for us. We're like, I don't understand if we have belief in ourselves that our hands are that much better than everybody else in the league. Why are we just not picking winning drafts then, or even like losing lanes that you can in theory win because our hands are better, which then scale in our favor? Like exactly what happened with FlyQuest in game 3, where it's like, oh, they pick a scaling comp, but like if their hands are better, which they were in this game, they're going to get natural advantages, which make that scaling comp impossible to play against at any point in the game. That's one where I don't quite understand it. I get in scrims it might be different, but I'm tired of the scrim narrative. And like what we see on stage in these big moments, or in this case online in a bigger moment, is just we just fall apart. Like the champions that Yon played in this series were Ashe, Jhin, Senna. Do those scream Yon champions to you? The other one that we've seen him play that he lost with, notably in that Sentinel series from this past weekend, was the Ezreal. Karma Ezreal lane. Like, yes, Yon is dealing a ton of damage, but for whatever reason, like every time that he plays it, we just do not win on it. So now, like, I know there's a lot of people that understandably don't want to watch EWC, and I completely get that. But for this Team Liquid organization, this is something that you kind of need to talk about, because so much of the identity has been tied in with this tournament, where like TL has been one of the few orgs that goes out and picks up a ton of different teams and a bunch of different esports. And let's be honest, League of Legends was one of their flagships and still probably is, even if the region of North America is struggling. For the possibility of them not making this tournament, that's not good. I get they finished second last year, technically, I believe, without Team Liquid there as well. But to miss it 2 straight years would be kind of crazy. So now the ball is entirely in winning the spring split. So the pressure just ramped up 20-fold, especially given that we have one more week with a series against DSG before things get very serious very quick. And I understand that FlyQuest has only beaten us in this online qualifier. They have not beaten us on stage, even though there's no fans there. They still have not beaten us on stage. But think about the schedule that's going to be upcoming after this week of LCS. You have Lion into C9, into likely a matchup, assuming we finish first, probably against FlyQuest in that first round. And given what we've seen so far, FlyQuest has gotten the better of us in draft. You have to stand here and believe that, yeah, like that's going to be a very close and contested series. We need to level up pretty massively to make sure that we are clear above everybody else. Because now you, like, again, you have to win the split. Like anything other than winning the split now is considered a failure. Pretty much has been all year, to be very clear. But it just feels like that those stakes are even more elevated now than they were. On today's Around the Org, it's actually inspired by a Cloudsicky tweet that he put out just before our series today, stating that basically, like, we've put out some awesome content on YouTube, but he feels like we're missing, like, some sort of opportunity to develop fans. And it got me thinking, because, like, this was one of the biggest criticisms I personally had of TL prior to joining the fandom, which was I don't feel like, despite the success of the org, there have been a lot of people that have like capitalized and kind of become longer term TL fans because of that. The second the win stopped going away or Double Lift left as a personality, it felt like the majority of the fandom kind of went with it, at least on the League of Legends front. Which now we're in a golden opportunity to be very clear to build something from the ground up, and that's kind of the whole point of this series and beyond. So I wanted to ask you all what your thoughts were, and I wanted to share some of them here because I think this is actually very interesting, like market research for not only the org, but just in general. Caitlin says, I mean, as a fan of the Eldritch Days of Curse, I'm always going to miss the weekly documentary series that gives a deep peek behind the curtain and really started relating with the team, cheering for them. Breaking Point, maybe a bigger TL fan, rather than scaring me away. I mean, that's the one that I've seen from most orgs at this point, or like most fans at this point, is that orgs are not putting out the documentary series content to like let us see behind the curtain and kind of see who these guys are besides game day. I mean, the only one that really posts like individual content, and even then he's just posting like gameplay stuff, it's not necessarily like behind the scenes as much or like the inner workings of the team, is Jose Dioto, which by the way, he's killing it on YouTube, to be very clear. Like, shout out to him. He's by far the most popular player in the LCS and the current frontrunner for MVP, in my opinion, of this league. But I do miss having those documentary series. For me personally, like it was one of the things I used for edits whenever it comes like playoff time and I really want to hype us up. I would screenshot portions of those documentary series and then make edits out of them on TikTok and beyond. And I think you lose that ability whenever you lose the footage. So for now, like we get some behind the scenes stuff, like typically just after like games are done, but we don't really get much more than that. And I know the argument from Team Liquid's side is, oh, well, the YouTube viewership is really not there for that. Well, the reality is the YouTube viewership for anything League of Legends, like esports specific for North America, is really not there, which is why you've seen our YouTube content very much pivot into like the kind of YouTube meta stuff, like the things that obviously will work well in the grander sense, which can then be cut up into short form content. But I do agree. Like, I think the documentary series is just one of those things that you do need to have, and it builds fandom better than any of these other videos necessarily can, or like it locks longer term fans in. I don't know what needs to happen for it to return. I don't know if it necessarily will based on the choices being made, but that's just my opinion on it. I do miss those documentary series. We had it with 100 Thieves last year. It made a really big difference. David Duck said, not going to lie, for me personally, I do feel like we need to market Yawn way more. Make him K-pop star or something. He's legit so happy and funny lately, and I think a lot of his fans would love to see more funny bits of Yawn and his thoughts. The problem with that, knowing Yawn from both interviewing him and just like seeing him across social media, he's a very like introverted guy. Like I know like you want to have the camera on him to capture those funny bits, but what would happen with Yawn specifically, I'd imagine, this might just be me projecting and somebody can come in and clear this up, but like I feel like if you had a camera on him more, those moments would disappear because he's not like a naturally like energetic on-camera personality. If those things just so happen to be recorded, that's different than knowing that a camera's on you 24/7. Not everybody is necessarily like designed or built for those types of things. And while I agree, like Yawn has the potential to be like a superstar of this league, his banter is really fun, and he kind of has these moments that are really exciting. I I've never gotten the perception that he's going to be that guy that's going to be on camera 24/7 for you, which makes it tough because then it's like, you know, how do you market? Well, then it's entirely on the team and like hyping up his gameplay and such. But I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you there. Los Cutter said, my take is that the team should be doing more to cater to Jose and Morgan's fan bases outside of NA. We need better Spanish, Korean, Vietnamese subtitles on content pieces. For example, Jose and Morgan have such huge fan bases, but they're not native English speakers. This is where I'm torn because I agree. You want to make sure like subtitles are a very easy thing to make sure you have available in the native languages for the players. But I think catering content specifically to a foreign audience is not going to be the way you need to go for North America. Like I know our LCS viewership is low, but like the whole point of being a NA team is that you're trying to build an NA audience. So I agree the subtitles 100% I think, but to me it's always going to be you cater to the local audiences here in North America because that's where the league's at. If this was the LEC, then obviously yes, you cater to European viewers. Why? Because the in-person audience is just where I think this industry like really needs to go. And I always am thinking on my part, like what more could I possibly be doing? Which I know comes with Justin's point of like people thinking that I'm a part of the org whenever I'm not. So like I'm trying not to like overstep on certain things here because I know I'm not officially part of this. And I've seen a few people mention like, oh, Team Liquid New York City. I've seen them mention it in passing, which I know is like subtle me trying to push that. But the reality is if you want to actually become New York's team, you have to do a lot more than what I'm doing right now, including consistent watch parties, like way more than what we're doing right now, which I don't have capacity to do. You need community events and beyond, not only with the org and with myself, but just like we need a Team Liquid trivia night once a month at OS, like at a minimum, or somewhere like any bar that will have us for like trivia nights. I don't know. It's small things like that that you can do in person that just get people out and about and hanging out with other fans that are really, really important that you can try and do online, but it just doesn't have the same impact as being able to go to a bar and do it there. Anyways, I think that's enough on this. If you want to read that thread, it's available over on Twitter. But it was just an interesting look around the org from the perspective of fans who have been following obviously way longer than I have and have a much longer period of reference that they can draw from versus, you know, me and my one split of data. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Last thing we got to talk about is our series upcoming this weekend against DSG, which actually I don't even know when it's being played. Let me double check. I think we're Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, like second game Saturday. And I'm entirely right on that. So we'll be right after C9 versus Dignitas. It's us versus DSG. DSG currently struggling a little bit more in the standings as Cryro has his moments, but for the most part, Sajed is unfortunately a little bit quieter so far. Lions has regressed to not really being in the best spot in terms of his support ranking in the league. And then topside, Castle is like the one really bright spot for this team. So actually, I very much am excited to watch Morgan versus Castle in this matchup because I think Morgan has the best hands out of anybody in that lane. However, Castle has proven that he can step up and level up in the moments. I do think there will be a pretty big difference in mid lane. Call Me has not been doing all that great. Now, Quid has his ups and his downs. So there are times where he'll step in and, make some mint plays, flash forwards for some stuff that we saw in the Annie game earlier today that you just sit here and it's like, okay, Quid happy gaming. Sure. It comes with the territory. Sometimes he's like really on. Sometimes he's like really off and you never know quite what you're going to get with him. But I mean, even at his worst, I still think his baseline is so much higher than Call Me's that we should be fine. And then Jose Dioto versus Cryro. This should be a stomp. Like, again, Jose Dioto is having an incredible split so far. Again, easier schedule. I acknowledge that. But putting away Cryro here then sets him up for this duel between Inspired and Blabber, of which he could easily cement that for himself. But you have to take care of what's seen as like the easy one this upcoming weekend. But the big thing that I'm looking for in this series in particular is just, again, I hate to beat a dead horse, but like drafts. It's just like I want to see cohesive drafts that have damage, that aren't on these timers, that feel like we have to hands check people, because it is very clear that while we can do that, and we have done that in certain games, we shouldn't entirely be reliant upon that. Because I think especially as we get into playoffs, that's going to be a problem. Games will slow down. Some of the plays and the pressure of the moment won't necessarily go your way. And if you're entirely reliant on like using that momentum and hand stiffing people, we've seen it so many times in North America that it eventually becomes a problem. That's not saying you have to sit back and scale, because that was like a TSM classic and something that you would see with Double If all the time, where it's like, oh, we're just going to scale. But then like you fall so far behind because you pick such bad lane matchups. Like you can't pick 3 losing lanes. I get that. You need a pressure relief valve somewhere. You need a lane to be able to play through in the early game. However, you still want to make sure you have options in case it does go late. At least in my opinion. Like, that's the draft philosophy that I personally live by. Now, clearly we're the exact opposite of that, where it's like, hey, let's just pick the Exodia like mid-game comps, or like the lanes that we can just simply outplay. But I just gut feeling says it's eventually going to come back to bite us in the ass if you don't see this turning around a little bit more. And I will keep saying this until the end of time. Jhin is a disgusting pick. I don't care how it's doing in scrims. I don't care if it's able to kill tanks in scrims and you're able to like 3-shot a Scion because you get to 4 items in game and it gets all wacky. I've seen enough on stage to just not believe in this pick personally. Like, especially for Yon, who I want to see on these heavy damage dealing hyper carry style ADCs that I just think fit him better. And maybe like I'm pushing for the wrong stuff, but like I haven't seen an interview yet disputing this or like the idea of it. So I don't know. Anyways, that's going to be it for this episode of The Harbor. Be sure to do me a favor and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Hit the like button down below. And in the comments, I want to hear from the potential or current like TL fans. What do you think solidifies like you as a long-term fan of this org? Or if you're on the fence, what do you think needs to happen for that switch to kind of flip in your brain? I know I have TL haters that watch this video, and that's perfectly fine. I appreciate your hate watch, but I want to know the people that are like on the fence of becoming a fan. What's missing for you? What can I do to help sway the tide other than just like showing my genuine passion and hosting events and beyond? Because whatever it is, I can pass along the message. I can be your messenger. So that's it for me. I'm going to see you around, and I need a hot shower because I just feel congested. Bye-bye.